Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Ashley Taylor. I'm an Army veteran with Operation Red Wings Foundation, and joining me today are...
I'm Sarah Blum with Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling, and I'm a Marine veteran.
Welcome.
Thanks.
I'm Sherry DeWata. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran with Red Feather Ranch.
Welcome.
And I am Ashley Thompson. I am an Army veteran.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Beach Pace. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I'm also CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I serve on the Hillsborough City Council.
Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. We're going to have a deep and very needed conversation about the traumatic experiences that are specific to women in the United States Armed Forces. This is a difficult topic, but one that needs the spotlight shined on it. First, some context.
Why are we talking about trauma, and trauma specific to women? Hello, I'm Vicki Horn, Marine and Washington County Veteran Services Supervisor. President Truman signed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act into law, allowing women to serve in the Reserve and regular armed forces during peacetime on June 12, 1948. Despite the official integration of women, systemic sexual assault, discrimination, and harassment plagued the armed forces. In 1991, the Tailhook military scandal shocked and opened the eyes of many to the rash of assaults within the military. U.S. Navy and U.S. Marine Corps aviation officers allegedly sexually assaulted fellow service members, up to 83 women and 7 men, at the Las Vegas Hilton. A gauntlet of male military officers in civilian clothes groped, molested, or committed other sexual assaults on women aviators who walked down a hallway. 40 naval and Marine officers received non-judicial punishment. No officers were disciplined for the alleged sexual assaults. In 1996, the Aberdeen Proving Ground Army Base, 12 drill instructors were charged with sex crimes, and letters of reprimand were sent to Aberdeen's commanding general and 3 senior officers. These officers were charged individually with numerous offenses, which included rape, assault, sexual intercourse by fear, harassment, obstruction of justice, and more. Days before the scandal became public, 3 male officers at Fort Leonard Wood were charged with incidents involving 22 female soldiers. Sexual harassment was not even a crime in the military until President Biden signed an executive order on January 26, 2022. We are speaking about trauma specific to women because it is systemic within the United States Armed Forces. It is estimated that 1 in 3 female service members have experienced some form of military sexual trauma. Most incidents are never reported. Giving a voice to this trauma is a step in eradicating it from within the military.
So some questions to get us started on this topic. Maisel, this is going to be for you. What was it like being a female who happened to be a Marine?
It was rough because in different groups, I was either a female Marine or I was just a Marine, but those two things had different expectations and I guess like loaded expectations.
To be a female Marine.
To be a female Marine and to just be a Marine. Like coming into the fleet and having this expectation like, oh, she's a female Marine, she's going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
She's going to get pregnant. It was the expectation that we were going to get pregnant. But there was never an expectation of like, oh, that's a male Marine. He's going to impregnate somebody or whatever.
Right. And was it looked at as like, they're going to get pregnant and we're going to have to deal with that?
Yes.
We're going to have to work that into our operation because this Marine got pregnant.
And then when we do get pregnant, it's like, oh, I knew it. I knew they were going to get pregnant.
Instead of being able to enjoy it.
Yeah. And so I remember when I did get pregnant, I ended up being so like upset that I became part of that, like I proved them right. And it made me disappointed in myself that I proved that I did this thing that didn't help other women in the service. But then it never, I never saw that disappointment. And I got that disappointment from my colleagues too. My sergeant that was supervising me, he was so disappointed in me. He was like a father figure to me.
Was disappointed in the fact that you got pregnant.
Disappointed in the fact that I became one of the female Marines that became pregnant. Instead of...
I'm so sorry you had to experience that.
Thank you. But there was, I never saw that same expectation or upsetness or whatever you call it from my used to be ex-boyfriend for
right. He
helping
wasn't
the deed.
judged for being half of the parent there.
Well, they're congratulated, right? It's it's almost like, hey, good job, man.
Yeah.
You know, whereas, for the women, it was the same thing at West Point. Women were accused of being there for, instead of a Bachelor of Science degree, for an MRS degree to get married.
To get married.
I'm like, there are much easier ways to marry a cadet than go through the entire process of getting accepted to the academy and going through that.
Let's discount the hard work that it was to get accepted to an academy.
Right. So it was always fascinating to me. It's like, oh, so you're here for your MRS degree, right? Like, people ask me that question. You know, the Mrs., to be clear, MRS Mrs. degree. I was like, nope, I'm here to serve my country just like all the other cadets
And then
here.
you punched him in the face. Right?
No. no violence. But I might have thought about it. You know?
Right.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's similar in the Navy too. Like, people will, if somebody leaves the ship, if a woman leaves the ship, there's rumors she must be pregnant. Is she pregnant? And if they know she's pregnant, she did it on purpose to get off the ship.
Yeah, there's that.
And even though, I mean, sure, there's people that do that, but when we were talking about earlier, that's why we don't want women coming in and making a bad name for the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah.
But like in my case, I've been on the ship for years. I was married for a bit, and like I checked all the boxes, and still people were talking about me.
Yeah. I think it was similar in the Army too, because if someone was pregnant right before a deployment, you got pregnant not to be deployed.
Right,
Yeah.
to get out of the deployment. Yeah, that was a common
Yes.
very
much so.
accusation.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the guy, again, congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. We had that on a deployment, and then not even on the deployment. If you get pregnant during a deployment, it was you're going to get in trouble. If you go back and you get some UCMJ thrown at you because you're destroying your position of being deployed.
Yeah.
So specific to women. So thank you for that conversation, ladies. I'd like to talk more about it, but to send us off for this next section, I'd like us to think about what would happen if you had to report something, if we had to talk to our leadership about how we felt about the topics that we're talking about. So we will be continuing this conversation, but next we are going to meet some more women veterans, and then Paul Riggs will join us with our feature interview.
Yeah, the camaraderie. I missed it when I separated in 2000. It was definitely a different experience because I transitioned from being active duty to being a Marine Corps spouse, and so there was a lot of challenges. And I separated medically, so I wasn't quite leaving on my own terms.
I miss the camaraderie. That makes me almost want to cry, but that's what I miss.
I think the thing that I miss most about being in the military is just like having a friend to do something with at any time. Literally, if you're in the barracks and you're like, I want to go do something, you just knock on as many doors until someone is like, all right, I'll go do that with you.
And there's a sense of camaraderie that you cannot replicate out in the civilian world. there's accountability. You always know someone's there for you. And wearing your uniform, you know, everyone knows your values. They know what you stand for. They know how you serve. You don't have to explain yourself. So I've missed that part.
My guest today is Army Nurse Vietnam veteran, Miss Sarah Blum. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I want to ask you first, what brought you to the armed forces?
Well, I kind of grew up knowing from an early age that I was going to be a military nurse because of a career booklet I made when I was 9 years old. And so I was in Los Angeles working as a nurse in 1966, and I'd been there for about 3 years. And I started hearing on the radio about this place called Vietnam that I'd never heard of before, and that they were fighting there. And then all that came back to me. Mm. And so, you know, I wasn't married, and there was no reason why not to. So I went down. I wanted to be an Air Force nurse, but I was too short. You had to be 5'2". Then I went to the Navy. They said, well, you have to work 2 years in a naval hospital in the United States first. And I thought, well, it'd be over by then, right?
Right.
Who knew?
If only.
So then I went to the Army, and they said, well, we really need operating room nurses. We'll train you to do it, and you can go to school. When you're done with your service, you can go back to college. And so I said, okay.
Excellent.
So I went in March of '66. I signed up and went to basic training in Fort Sam Houston, Texas in May. And then because of the operating room training, I had to go to Letterman General Hospital in San Francisco. So I was there for 5 months.
In San Francisco.
Yeah.
What were some of the most impactful moments that you remember from your start there in San Francisco?
There were two. The first was there was this really long corridor I had to walk down to get to the operating room. And the first time I walked down, because I'm like trying to find it, right? So I go down this corridor, and it's lined with veterans. This is '66, and it's already lined with wounded Vietnam veterans. And they have this look about them that came to be known as the 1,000-yard stare. And so the first time I was looking for the OR, so I just kept going, right? But I realized I could feel them. I could feel them looking, and could feel something, I don't know what exactly. And I knew that I had to leave more time to get down that corridor. So from that day on, I left early enough that I had like an hour to an hour and a half to spend with them, and I would stop and talk to them and get to know them, and started hearing all these horrific stories of their experiences in Vietnam and getting to know them. Yeah. And then the second experience was in the actual operating room course. I learned how to do surgeries on all parts of the body. When we were doing open heart surgery, I was scrubbed in, and the way it works is that the main surgeon is a colonel, and he only does the work in the actual heart. Everything else the major does. So we got to the point where the colonel had just finished his work in the heart itself, and he was leaving, and the major was going to close, and I'm still doing my job, which is to assist the surgeon, give him the instruments. And all of a sudden, I feel these big hands I feel this body behind me and these big hands on my breast, and I froze. It was like, and I couldn't think or talk or anything in those seconds. And finally I got my voice, and I said, "Sir, if you don't take your hands off me right now, I'm going to break scrub." And that would not have been a good thing.
Yeah.
And then I was told, the next day I came in, I was told that he reported me for being insubordinate because I wouldn't let him do what he wanted, and that I would never, ever be able to scrub on one of his cases ever again.
Sarah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and it's a huge issue, which hopefully one of these days we'll talk about. It's military sexual trauma and all the different abuses and the retaliation rate, which is very high.
Yeah, in the retaliation of not just, here he is affecting your career, your job, and it's just from your story, it's clearly systemic in that room. Nobody else said anything.
Nobody said anything.
Nobody said anything.
No.
Sarah, I'm so sorry. You're in Letterman in San Francisco. I love San Francisco. It's very nice. And now you find yourself going to Vietnam. What were some of the environmental shocks or surprises on your way there?
I think what hits everybody, when you get off the plane, it's this incredible heat. It was like probably 110 degrees or something. And then there's all these smells that you can't really identify, but it's war, it's blood, it's earth, it's dirt, it's, I don't know if you know, but they burn all the excrement. So they burn, I call them the shit pots. They burn the shit pots. And so that's in the air. So you get hit with the smells and the heat.
The heat, just when you come off.
Yeah. After I got situated and got all that stuff together, then I went to the OR, and then I got acclimated there. And my very first case, the surgeon said, "Which side do you want?" And I said, "Sir? Which side do you want?" I said it again, "Sir?" And finally I realized he was really asking me what side I wanted. I said, "Okay, I'll take this side because that's where my instruments are." And I learned from that day on that I did the same thing as the surgeon. And I had learned it. That's what I was taught, right? But I just didn't realize that that's what it was going to be. So we go over each wound, because there's guys that hit landmines and they have wounds all over their body. So we go over each wound and we make a cut, and we find the metal, take it out. And so all over the operating room all day you can hear clink, clink, clink as all the metal's going into these bowls, metal bowls. And then we cut out the dead tissue, and then we irrigate with normal saline solution, and then we bandage them up. So they got these wounds and bandages all over their bodies. In January '68, I came home. I was just shocked by the whole experience that I had. I landed at Travis Air Force Base, and for 2 hours they wouldn't let us off the plane, and they wouldn't say why. And then we found out later that was because there were protesters around. And I was not keyed into that at all. I had no clue.
Right.
And then they told us it's safer if you take your uniform off. So, so that was just a total shock to me. I went to Madigan Army Hospital, and I became the head nurse of the orthopedic ward, which was such great duty because I got to actually be with the guys awake, right? In the OR, they're not awake.
Right.
Talk to them, help them, welcome them home, which I loved. I had an order on my ward that whenever the busloads of Vietnam vets came, that they called me no matter where I was. I would be at lunch or in a meeting, they'd call me because I wanted to be the one to welcome them home, greet them and welcome them home, and tell them they could have whatever they wanted to eat because we had that set up. And I would wheel this we had a great big cart that had phone on it. That's just how it was back then, right? And they could call home, call their friends, their girlfriends, whatever.
What was it that that drove you to care for the soldiers there at Madigan?
Well, it was just the whole experience that I'd had. I mean, to me, they were like brothers. These are my brothers, right? And so I was very protective of them.
I love that. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Paul. So now we'll go back to our conversation, ladies. So what would happen if we had to report something?
Nothing. It was a joke. We were talking before the break how being groped, touched, rubbed up against in a doorway or a hatch or whatever was commonplace. And you would normally have to report these things to your chain of command, which in many cases were the perpetrators. So imagine complaining to a judge who just groped you to not do that.
And expect something to happen.
And expect something to happen. And what would happen is usually retaliation, as Captain Blum had mentioned.
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead. Yes. I remember we had a new CO, and he wanted to be more. He wanted for us to feel more support, not us as in women, but just in general, Marines to feel supported and heard. So he put up this like, I can't remember what it's called, but like a gripe box. It was like a mailbox in this really long hallway in between all of our shops, for us to, the word where we don't say who we are. Anonymously complain about something, or anonymously like say something, because he knew that we can't always go to our chain of command, but
they had a camera right over the box.
It ended up being more of a joke thing of because I would have to go that way. Women have to go that way to go to the bathroom to go upstairs. So sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, were you going to the box or whatever?"
Right.
And I'd be like, "No, fool, I'm going to the bathroom." But there were times where I'm like, "What if I did go to that box?"
Right.
And then I was like, "Oh, but then if somebody sees me, they're gonna be like, oh, she went to the box." And then they would talk and be like, "Oh, what'd she say? Well, like, what did she say?"
They automatically knew. No, it
yeah.
was you or a problem causer. I would imagine it was what the perception would be.
Yeah. So then it became like a fear thing of like, okay, well, even if there is something, like I'm not gonna go there because somebody's gonna see me, and then if something comes up, they're gonna know it was me. And I was like, it'll just stay there as like a mailbox.
Right.
So that was my experience of complaining. There was nobody really for me to complain to except for friends.
Yeah.
So that box had somewhat of a good intention, but maybe it could have been executed a little differently.
Yeah.
Because it didn't serve its purpose, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and just when you're considered a second-class citizen, your complaints are considered that as well. And when I was at the academy, we were going to get sexual harassment training. And so it was a new thing where the Army was going to send out a videotape. So this is in like 1989. It was a big deal, that they filmed this command sergeant major talking about sexual harassment, and it was sent worldwide to all the Army units. And the week that we were supposed to be shown this video, front page in the New York Times, this command sergeant major had been accused of and found guilty of sexual harassment.
Jeez.
And they made the decision to show the tape anyway.
And take it seriously. I'm imagining
Theoretically.
they tried to take it seriously.
So sitting in the training room, with, mostly guys, and then the women who were spread out among the group, and we had to sit there and watch that man explain to us what sexual harassment was and what not to do and what to do. But he was on the front page of the New York Times having perpetrated it. And I knew then where I stood in the U.S. military. And I still wanted to serve, but I learned to shut up. So,
yeah.
It's like a betrayal by your fellow, in my case, shipmates or Marines or soldiers, and then a betrayal by the institution itself, the people that are supposed to care and take care of us.
Right.
And like in my case, I had dated the same boy as this woman that reported her sexual assault, and because I had dated him, like I was involved in the investigation, and and he ended the relationship, but he kept on, I think it was a power thing or something, he kept on harassing me. He's the one that molested me in a hallway full of people. Nobody said anything to him.
No one said anything.
And then I was called into the Master Chief's office, and he's telling me details about this case that I don't think he should have been, and he's trying to explain to me that she was sexually abused as a child, that's why she's having all these issues. And I don't think that was relevant. And I start crying, and he's like, "Why are you crying?" Because I'm being sexually harassed by the same person.
Right.
And then the betrayal by other people, like him and his friends, we were in the same class, and they would, I was told not to talk to them, don't have any involvement with them, but we're still stationed in the same place, so we're walking past each other. And they have these smirks on their faces, like they know a secret, like they know something.
Yeah.
I did not feel safe in that situation. And then it was me that was taken out of the class and put back. It wasn't him. It wasn't his friends. So
they were justifying that behavior by punishing you and nothing with him.
Yeah. Because I was rocking the boat.
you
Because
were
I
rocking
said
the boat.
something.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that,
Yeah.
Sherry. And that's women, right? You got moved, not him. You got moved, and now you are the person who. Oh well, she's getting moved. Not only is it enough of a thing when women get to a unit, but now a woman's coming to the unit with baggage, right? Because we all know that people knew, like you said, you were getting those smirks. That's terrible, Sherry.
It is. And I think I've witnessed people that had similar experiences as you. They'll come to a unit, but now they have this target on their back.
The target on their back.
Oh, yeah.
So they're assigned all types of duties that doesn't make sense to keep them apart from the unit, because the unit don't want to deal with the real issue. Yeah.
Don't
Or
put
they
them
get
in
extra
a-
training.
Yeah.
Rather, oh, you should go to this training. Really? I just got here. Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
I remember having conversations with other Marines talking about rape or sexual harassment or whatever, and the conversations would go from like women military members in submarines all the way to like why we shouldn't have women in combat zones or in infantry, and it always came down to the like something's gonna happen, like the woman is going to be sexually harassed or something, but it wouldn't happen if she wasn't there, you know.
Right.
Like if you take away that problem, if you take away that thing, that reason that happens, then there's no problem. Like it's because she's there, she shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, instead of focusing on the fact that how about should be no sexual harassment.
Exactly.
There should be none of that. Instead, yes.
Yeah.
It's like
so we were the problem.
We were the problem instead of the
instead of those folks perpetrating these things, them being the problem.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, because of your existence in this unit, you're causing the problem.
You know how men are. Like
Yeah, it was boys will be boys. Boys will be
should know
boys all
better.
the time. Yeah.
We need to play by the rules so that we get invited to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was another incident where I was sitting across from my battalion commander at a dinner. There's a whole group of us. The whole unit was there. He was there with his wife. He went to reach for some salt, and when he did so, he just reached like this, and his wife went like that. And I was sitting across. She flinched when her husband moved toward her. And I knew there, similar to when I was a cadet, and now I was a second lieutenant, that if I had any issues as a female in this unit, it's not going to get resolved by this man.
Right.
If that's the way he treats his wife, I know how he's going to treat me. It was very clear.
And that had to shape, especially as a cadet, had to shape how your whole view of your future service would look.
Yeah.
So that leads me to our next question. How does military trauma shape our service? And we're going to close after this. So let's leave some final thoughts here on the table with that. How does it shape our service? I can see that how that would hugely shape your service.
Yeah. I learned to be quiet. I learned to...
Which I'm so glad you're not anymore, Beach.
Thanks. My family would disagree, but I learned to be quiet, and I learned to do my best to stay out of trouble and avoid people in many cases, which pulls a unit apart, But when somebody gets a reputation, male or female, you learn to stay away from them.
Yeah.
So you don't get put in a tough position.
Put in that.
Yeah, but I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's,
I think we learn to conform.
yes.
We learn to conform to the system of, oh, if this person has a target on their back or if this is happening, don't really say nothing about it. You just stay over here so you won't get a target on your back now.
Right.
So it's just conforming to that system that the military creates, where we don't really have a say in, hey, this is happening and something needs to be done.
I think it really stunts our growth.
Yeah.
'Cause there isn't anybody to go to trust. And
And to have faith that those people, even if we do find someone, that something's actually going to be done about it.
right. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
It does stunt that growth because if only we felt safe in a military that protected us, which I like to believe since all of us are out. Maybe it's a work in progress. I hope for our women that are still serving.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe if they would, retention would probably be a lot better.
I agree. And I think it brings us back to the betrayal, as you said, right? You know, the Army tagline for me was be all you can be. And I think there's a subcontext to it of unless you're a woman, right? Be all you can be, serve your country, except, you know, there's this asterisk next to it. And the thing is, we all wanted to serve our country, we all wanted to make a difference, but we had this other thing that we had to worry about when really we just wanted to serve.
Yep.
So Maisel, any final thoughts on this question of how does military trauma shape our service?
I think it just ingrained to me something that a lot of us learned in boot camp by our female instructors, drill instructors, and it was that we had 3 choices that we could be in the Marine Corps. And it was, you could be a bitch, you could be a butch, or you could be a slut. But you had to be one because, or else somebody else was going to, label you as that. Anyways.
And those were the only 3 choices.
Those are only 3 choices.
And assuming that all 3 of those are bad, what if someone, you know?
Yeah.
I am so sorry that's a huge experience shaper right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, for talking through this tough subject with me. Thank you all for joining us today in celebrating the 75th anniversary of women being allowed and recognized to serve in the armed forces.